Excellencies, good morning, parliamentarians. We are going to start, as usually, with video message this second morning. I would like to introduce myself, although I've met with all of you several times and also yesterday. My name is Hanna Birna Kristjánsdóttir. I'm a senior advisor for UN Women on women's leadership and chair of WPL board. It's a pleasure to be with you. We are going to show here to begin with, after you had a gorgeous night, invitation by the Japanese Parliament yesterday. Thanks again for the honor and the way it was hosted. I'm sure you all had a great experience there. We are going to start with video messages, and we're going to do several of them. Leaders around the world that wanted to make sure that you knew that they were aware of what you're doing here today. Because there are some of the buses that are bringing our ladies to the house are later than we thought. So we'll do the video messages before, and then we'll start the formal program after that. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Women leaders are essential to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Countries with a larger number of women as ministers and parliamentarians tend to have lower levels of inequality, more confidence in government, and higher spending on health. But the number of women who occupy these positions in the OECD countries is still below 30%. So let's keep working to empower more women. Let's replicate your success. Let's make the most out of the 2019 Women Political Leaders Summit.
Madam President, members of the Women Political Leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Even though I unfortunately cannot be with you today, I am truly glad I can deliver this message to such a distinguished group of women leaders. I am proud to have taken over the chairmanship of the Council of Women World Leaders, the only organization in the world dedicated to women heads of state and government, with 75 members who are all current and former women presidents and prime ministers. The Council of Women World Leaders has been collaborating with women political leaders on various WPL summits for 3 years now, and we're looking forward to working with you on the Women Leaders Global Forum in Iceland in November. Gender equality and empowerment of women are issues very close to my heart. I regard the promotion of women's rights and their protection as one of my primary responsibilities as the President of Croatia, the chair of the Council of Women World Leaders, but also as a citizen of the world. All the issues being discussed in the world today, human rights, youth, climate, social justice, global poverty, and inequality, are incredibly important for the humankind and the world. In an attempt to address global challenges we face today, we have set our Sustainable Development Goals. This was one of the most important efforts towards the universalization of human dignity. Gender equality is itself one of these goals. I believe that without it, the other SDGs will stay out of our reach as well. Therefore, gender equality and women and girl empowerment must always be one key element of every discussion on global challenges. It is a topic that we cannot do without. Whoever thinks that progress can be achieved without it is mistaken. Sustainable peace without women is unthinkable. Without the inclusion of women, peace is frail, societies crumble, and global development is hampered. That is why they need to be given full and equal access to resources and opportunities. We need their say in the prevention and resolution of conflict. When women are included in decision-making, development and peace are driven forward. Their political participation is crucial for good governance and democracy. When women are included in rebuilding and reconciliation, the process is bound to succeed. This is why we need more women involved in the maintenance of peace and security, sustainable development, and politics in general. And this is why I believe that events such as these are so important. In order to not only shed the light on the issues, give visibility and a voice to women and girls, but to also encourage real change. We need to explore the possibilities, the lessons learned, and best practices, and motivate profound conversation. And in the end, provoke change. Change in the hearts and minds of the people, but also encourage the lawmakers and governments to do more. We must and we can do better for a better future for women, for men, and the world on the whole. Thank you very much.
Dear all, it's my great pleasure to greet such an exceptional audience at the Women Political Leaders Summit in Tokyo. Such events are a great opportunity to connect and establish ties among women leaders who have courage and ambition to change the world. Having SDGs as our guidelines and a collective strength of hundreds of women leaders, we can make the world turn for the sake of all humanity. And I'm sure that this summit will get you more inspired, empowered, and determined to take action for your communities, countries, and continents. Best wishes and luck to all of you.
I bring to you warm greetings of Yahweh from the Marshall Islands. It is regretful that I cannot join you for the Women Political Leaders Summit 2019 in Tokyo, Japan, especially since this is the first summit in East Asia Pacific region. Nevertheless, I fully support the WPL mission of raising both the numbers and influence of women in political leadership positions. I would like to pay special recognition to the many women leaders, many of whom are in the audience today, for their endless dedication, commitment, passion, and sacrifices. As women leaders, we must continue to push forward because we are also leaders of a marginalized segment of society. That is why this past March, I convened the inaugural Pacific Women Leaders Coalition Conference. The Pacific Women Leaders Coalition explored options to advance gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. By empowering women and girls, we are increasing the chances to have more women leaders and for their voices to be heard in the highest decision-making area. As current women leaders, let us continue the momentum of breaking barriers. There are no gender limits to leadership, and it is up to us to convince future generation of girls of that. I am confident that the summit will be a success, particularly as it leads the G20 summit. As you dialogue on necessary actions in relation to the SDGs, be mindful of the fact that you are also speaking to all women, wherever they may be, who must be empowered so as to take on other leadership positions within their communities. Komoltada, thank you once again.
La igualdad de género es una cuestión de justicia social y también un poderoso motor de crecimiento económico, de crecimiento incluyente, sostenible. Necesitamos acabar con todas las barreras y con todas las brechas de género que impiden a las mujeres desarrollar su pleno potencial en el mundo del trabajo, el de la empresa, la ciencia o el de la política. Esta es una de las principales prioridades del Gobierno de España de cara a la cumbre del G20 en Osaka.
English translation is written on the screen.
Economías del mundo, de los principales países, con las políticas de igualdad de género. Entre tanto, quería enviaros un mensaje de apoyo a vosotras, mujeres líderes en el mundo de la política, para que sigáis trabajando desde vuestra cumbre en Tokio y en vuestros puestos por una sociedad más justa, más próspera y más sostenible.
Women are critical to resolving the world's global challenges, from poverty and equality to injustice and climate change. As the first female chief executive of Hong Kong, I would naturally like to see more women in leadership positions to drive these changes. The Women Political Leaders Summit brings together women leaders from all over the world to connect, inform, and inspire. I'm sure it will create a strong impact. I wish the summit every success.
Ladies and gentlemen, we of course thank the leaders that decided to address us like this morning. And now we move into the formal program of today. We have a great day ahead of us. I will be moderating and being with you here early, but then following that, the Master of Ceremony will be Amanda Ellis, the Executive Director that you had here on stage yesterday, and I'm sure she will do an excellent job for you. We now have with us a great guest. We are so honored to have the Executive Director of UN Women with us here today. She is, of course, a woman and a leader that all of us have admired for a long, long time. We all look at UN Women to see what they are saying on what women leaders around the world can do, so we are greatly honored to have her here with us today. I would also like to point out to the audiences and to our participants and also those that are watching this live on CBS that we have distributed this call to action that is in your seats. And then also UN Women has distributed amongst you this progress report that I'm sure will give us loads of information on how to better move ahead and do what we discussed so powerfully yesterday, to moving from talking about the why to talking about the how and making sure that we move into action. And that is why I'm really delighted to welcome on stage Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, Executive Director of UN Women, and to talk to her about the progress and what we need to push further is Silvana Koch-Marin, the President of WPL. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, members of parliament. Wonderful to see you all again after the beautiful evening we had yesterday. And isn't it wonderful to start the day with such a perfect and interesting and amazing woman who's with me here on stage. We all, as Hannah said, have admired her in her career path, admire her now in her important work that she does for UN Women. And just to give a few highlights of your career as a politician, because of course the audience are women politicians from 87 countries around the world, different parts of different continents, and more than 400 participants came here to Japan. So, Phumzile, you became in 1994, if I looked at this correctly, a member of parliament, served in different capacities, different policy areas from trade, and then to when you were minister, first time you were minister for arts and culture and science, second time minister then for minerals and energy, and then later the first vice president of South Africa, making you the highest ranking woman at the time in the continent of Africa. So a very, very impressive political trajectory. And now you, of course, work on a global scale as the executive director of UN Women. And so let me start maybe by asking you, you have the oversight of the situation that women and girls live in today in 2019. And where do you think, what kind of is the state of freedom, of rights, of opportunities for women and girls around the world today in 2019?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me in your kind introduction. And I'd like to greet and salute all the women in the room, and thank you for the hard work that you do back in your countries. I have to say, sometimes I feel nostalgic and homesick for Parliament. And when I think about all those bills that you have to read, and I realize it's actually not a walk in the park. So thank you so much for your work. We are in 2019. We have adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, which give us a common platform for all of us in our countries to work around for advancement of women. And we are, in 2019, just 1 year short of 25 years of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration. So we have a rich declaration that we came out with in Beijing. We have a rich agreement in the SDGs. So a lot is there for us to move forward and for us to hold each other and our countries and society accountable. And what has happened? Parliamentarians have done a lot of work in passing laws that are aimed at facilitating gender equality. But in most of our countries, the implementation of those laws is not where it is supposed to be. So we're not getting the full benefit of the hard work of passing of the laws. But having said that, only 6 countries in the world have countries that have no discriminatory laws. So we have a lot of work to do in order to make sure that in 10 years, we hopefully can have countries that have no discriminatory laws. In the last 25 years especially, we have seen more girls going to school and more girls staying at school, but the dropout rate is still very high. So progress, but work to do. The most disturbing of the challenges that we face now is violence against women and the underrepresentation of women in politics, in economics, etc. For instance, 50% of the people that we surveyed recently said a home is the most unsafe place for a woman because every day about 137 women are killed at home by their relatives. So for the large number of women in the world, there isn't something like home sweet home. So we have a challenge there. You've passed the laws are not being implemented, and there is no repercussions for those who kill and ill-treat women at home. In 2019 also, 75% of parliamentarians are still men. I think that's a challenge. We have less than 7% heads of states that are women. We have only 13 countries with gender equal cabinets. Ladies, we have a lot of work to do. And what we need now is for all of us that are not in parliaments to work much closer with you so that we can use your competitive advantage to move things forward, because this job is just too hard for any segment of society to take forward alone. And I think for us as UN Women, and I speak for the UN system as a whole, we are ready to collaborate and to make sure that we make bold steps, because in the next 10 years of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, this really has to change, not in small doses. we really need dramatic change in the next 10 years. And we know the problem, and I think we have some experience of what it is that needs to be done to bring about the changes.
Well, thank you for mentioning both the to-do list for the politicians in the room, get rid of laws that are discriminatory. You are legislators. You can look at the laws that discriminate against women in your countries, try to find majorities to remove them. That's a kind of a to-do coming to us from UN Women. Also about the implementation. Indeed, many countries have beautiful laws, but they're not implemented. And let me ask you on one point which is rather disturbing, I find. Seems to be growing awareness of the importance of more women in leadership, of the changing role of women in societies, have them really on equal with men and live the full potential. However, this growing awareness also seems to bring about higher resistance to that change. And looking at data, the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap report, which 4 years ago was just around 100 years to closing the gender gap, is now at more than 200 years to closing the gender gap, which is really worrying. Also the size of the increase of that gender gap. So what you said, we need to push back the pushback. How should we do that?
Yes, I mean, definitely we are experiencing a pushback against women's rights, such that even the progress that we make sometimes is being compromised. So our job is to push back against the pushback, as the Secretary General of the United Nations say. And this includes investing much better in work for gender equality. At this point, only about 10% of the resources that women need in order to implement programs that support gender equality within national governments, in general public, in the general public, in civil society, actually gets these resources. Only 10% is available to actually implement programs that have already been sanctioned as necessary. But when it comes into allocating funds, only 10%. So the challenge there is for us who have access to ministers of finance, to the treasuries of countries, to really encourage allocation of resources to programs for women, to women's ministries, to funds that are needed for gender mainstreaming in the different departments, support to civil society that is working, and women's organizations that are working on gender equality, and UN Women, and every other institution, Women Delivered. In general, women's organizations are really just struggling to survive. And yet, there are about more than 2 billion women who live in countries where their rights are being violated. Only 75% of the rights of women overall are actually being respected if you compare to those of men. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but just 10% of the resources in national economies are actually being allocated to address initiatives that address gender equality, means that the pushback gets to win. And we actually have the same challenge also internationally with international and donor funding. The resources that go to support gender equality are less than 30%. So we need you to speak up to this.
And you might be interested to hear that yesterday in our discussions, many of the women political leaders called for women to go into the policy areas of budget and finance,
exactly,
because that's where you really can create change. But let us go back to the topic of sustainable development goals, because of course the theme of this summit is taking actions to advance society through SDGs. And there is the general knowledge that SDGs really will increase the participation, the ability, the role of women, not only the specific goal on equality between women and men, but also throughout all the SDGs, also thanks to really the tireless work that UN Women did on making sure that this mainstreaming is happening. So what can this group of parliamentarians do specifically on SDGs from you? Because I think you have, in addition to the to-do list that you said earlier, also a specific call for the parliamentarians here.
Let me start by saying that even though we have the challenges, we have the pushback, we are not helpless. And women have been able to do significant and impressive work, notwithstanding the challenges. So we must not be discouraged by the statistics that we see and the challenge that we still face. Firstly, let me just make my call to you, and I want to be very specific to the call on the issues that are relevant and within reach by women parliamentarians. Ending of discriminatory laws. No one else can do that. No pressure, but we are the only ones who can actually do something about ending discriminatory laws. And that goes a long way to end discrimination in law. Secondly, let us actually make sure that we do something about increasing the number of women in our cabinets, the number of women in our parliaments. That means that you speak to your political parties. That means that when there's an election in your party, you make sure that in the manifesto of your political party, there's something really concrete about what needs to happen to women. My call to action to you is also that you implement the laws that we've already passed. There are so many good laws that are already passed. We are not implementing them effectively, and we are not always monitoring those that need to be monitored and need to be accountable. Use us, civil society, to support you to collect data, to track, and to strengthen the implementation of those laws. My call to action for you is to challenge the traditional norms and stereotype that perpetuate discrimination against women, because stereotypes and norms sometimes are stronger than the laws themselves. If we don't address the stereotypes, then we are unable to take full advantage of the laws. And of course, let us support other women in politics. It is important that we lift as Islam. It's not a good thing to be on top alone. You actually have to work to have other women and to keep them there. So let us be each other's support system. This is my call to action to you. And across this, mobilize the funding and the resources, because all this work costs money. So please make sure that we mobilize the resources necessary to do the work.
Well, let's give a big round of applause to this important call of action. It's, I think, a very, very significant moment that this call to action is coming from you and women to women political leaders. Because when you are back in your respective parliaments, in your respective governments, there is now a global guidance, something that is an agreement in the UN institutions that this should be a job for women parliamentarians. So I think it's very, very significant that these 5 points, which are also very broad, are out here.
I also want to emphasize and remind you that next year we will mark the 25 years of the implementation of the Beijing platform. As we speak now in most of our countries, we are doing reviews and writing the 25 review of each country. We're going to have regional conferences at the end of the year where we will look at the trends of the coming out of the implementation. In the CSW of 2020, the Secretary General will present a global report on the 25-year status of women. And after that, women's organizations will meet, firstly in Mexico, to look at what does this picture tell us? And I can tell you there will be a lot to say about laws, parliaments, and so on. And I'd like you to be part of that process. In Mexico, we will then form the different groups of what needs to be taken forward. I can tell you now, women will want that the world fast tracks and takes forward the work of representation of women in parliaments. And then in July, in France, we will have the biggest ever women's conference in terms of these issues that cuts across all the areas in Beijing, which will be based on the reports that you would have written about each of your own countries. And there we will form coalitions with women in civil society, who are our biggest backup for this, with young people, with men, with private sector. And that conference is themed Generation Equality, Realizing Your Rights Now. So we are forging this generation equality, and we need you to be part of that generation equality. And I look forward to see you throughout this process.
Well, thank you. We have not taken a vote here on, but I'm sure I can say on behalf of the participating women political leaders that there is a huge enthusiasm in being part of this momentum creation, which is so significant, 25 years after the Beijing platform, 10 years after UN Women was created. So let's next year make it the year of the women and make the most of these anniversaries. I already thank you now for this wonderful presence here and all the encouraging words and the very concrete to-dos. Before we leave the stage, I would also add another date to the many important dates that the Executive Director Phumzile has just mentioned. And this is the date and the place of the next WPL Summit. So next year's WPL Summit is there to really support, underline, amplify all the activities of UN Women and the importance of international cooperation as such. So after having traveled the world with our summit, having been in all continents, next year we will go to the UN. We will have the summit inside the United Nations headquarters in New York, 22nd to 24th of June, and we will rock the UN. That's the words of the Executive Director. Thank you so very much. Another round of huge applause to the Executive Director. Thank you.
Dear all, our greatest thanks to the Executive Director Phumzile and Silvana for this great discussion. I'm hoping, and I know that I speak on behalf of all of us, that the over 320 parliamentarians from 89 countries joining us here at this summit will make sure that they take this call to action to their place. We have often had the discussion at the annual summits here that we need a global guidance. It is now in-house on behalf of UN Women. So I hope that we will all take that call and make sure that we follow this list and do what is needed to do in order for us to go where we need to go and must be. Again, I remind you of the progress report that is in your seat. But having said all this, I see that the women are all coming more or less in-house, so the buses must be in place, which leaves me with leaving you for a while in the capable hands of Amanda. Thank you.
Ohayo gozaimasu. It's a great honor and pleasure to take over as MC today. And I'm thrilled with the call to action from Phumzile. Many of you saw the video yesterday and picked up some of the papers, which is part of this global movement. So we are really looking forward to bringing about the bold change that Phumzile mentioned. It's now my great honor to introduce this morning's first panel, a conversation on health and women. It will be moderated by Katja Iversen, who is the CEO and president of Women Deliver. Many of you may have attended the recent conference in Vancouver, as I did, and I was speaking to Katja this morning. There were 8,008 attendees. So a wonderful record. And Katja, if you would like to come up to the stage now and introduce your fellow panelists. Thank you. You take the furthest away.
Good morning. I will start here and then I'll move and join the panel in a minute. Guests and friends on site and online, Hello to all of you out there, wherever you are in the world. It's good to have you with us. It is a real pleasure to welcome you here today. Yes, I'm Katja Iversen, and I'm the President and CEO of Women Deliver. We are a global advocacy organization that champions gender equality and health and rights of girls and women. So it is such a pleasure to be here for particularly this panel. So let's get to it right away. A gender equal world is healthier, wealthier, more productive, and more peaceful. And to get to gender equality, we need that all girls and women have access to health care, and that includes their sexual and reproductive health and rights. Health is a bedrock of gender equality. We will not get there without. So to generate the investments needed for women's health, we need female leadership in the public and private sector and civil society. And we just happen to have a great group of women leaders from those very sectors here today. And that, yes, as we heard at the Women Deliver conference a couple of weeks ago, we framed all our discussions around power, the power of movements to make change, the power in structures or barriers, and also the power of individuals. And this is truly a panel of powerful women, just as we have a lot of power gathered in this room today. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Emiko Takagai, Japan's Minister of Health, Labor and Welfare, and a member of the House of Councillors. And I'm just going to introduce all three of you. She really knows what she's talking about because she's also a registered nurse. And then we have Marcella Corcoran Kennedy. She's a member of the lower house of the Irish Parliament and a former Minister of State for Health Promotion. And she's committed to making Ireland the first truly gender equal country in the world. So you have your competition here, because I hope that's what all of you are working for. And then Dorte Mikkelsen, President Asia Pacific at MSD and VP at the Merck Group, and a wonderful fellow Dane. So this morning we are going to have a fast, furious, and fabulous discussion where we will solve the challenge of women's health care for governments around the world in just 25 minutes. So my dear panelists, you will understand that I will be the strict time police, because we want to hear all your ideas for solutions that are both necessary and possible. And I invite all of you to, of course, listen hard, because there'll be a lot of inspiring here, but also to tweet your hearts out, because we know that we need to get this conversation to reach even more people than are here in this room. So we're going to start with Minister Emiko to introduce the topic from the perspective of the host country.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emiko Takagai. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak here. Women parliamentarians have a responsibility to develop public policies that allow women of all ages to express themselves and demonstrate their capabilities wherever they wish. Did you know that Japanese women have the longest life expectancy in the world, but sleep the least? The reason is that many women have to reduce the amount of time they sleep to do household chores. In fact, the gap between the healthy life expectancy and the average life expectancy of women is 13 years. This difference is 1.4 times the difference for our male counterparts. It's a well-known fact that women who work at night have a higher risk of various diseases, including cancer and heart disease. A recent nationwide survey revealed that women who feel that they are overloaded with household duties have a lower quality of life in relation to health. pent-up stress and burdens in everyday life may be unknowingly undermining the healthy lifespans of Japanese women later in their lives. The number of infants with low birth weight is also on the rise in Japan, with about 9.4% of all babies born today. There is a strong tendency for younger generations of Japanese women to be on the thin side, shedding light on the issue of securing appropriate nutrition for women, including those of childbearing ages. We are facing an urgent need to comprehensively promote lifelong health from childhood to the last stage of life, including not only mental, physical, and social well-being, but also education, culture, labor, economic activities, and other types of social participation. At the same time, it's also important to build social infrastructure to redistribute roles, such as for household labor. Here, I'd like to suggest 2 points. One is to develop a legal system that allows society as a whole to comprehensively support women by scientifically studying women's health and making use of that knowledge. The second is to establish an interdisciplinary and interagency system that would enable the aforementioned policies to be formed and increase the flexibility of the Minister in charge of public concerning women. Women's health is not just an asset for women themselves, but it's an integral part of maintaining the vitality of families and communities over the long term. Based on this understanding, we must work together so that we can reach a time when the happiness of women shines even brighter in every corner of the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Truly an example we can all learn from, and the intersectional approach and cross-sector approach you have in Japan is an inspiration. The good thing about women is that we are often very flexible. And we are going to be very flexible right now. And it is very opportune, when we're talking about women's health, to invite the Director General of WHO to come and do his keynote, because I know there's a G20 that is waiting, and we will count on you to carry our messages down there. Dr. Tedros.
Dr. Tedros, it's our great pleasure to invite you to come to the lectern. And I want to say what a pleasure it was working with you when I was ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva. So it's wonderful to see you here. And we know that you will be carrying our messages forward loud and clear to the G20. So please, may I invite you to come to the lectern.
Apologies actually for intruding. I would have loved to speak after the panel. First of all, I would like you to join me in congratulating Katja Iversen for her successful Women Deliver conference in Vancouver. Thank you so much, Katja, for your leadership. Tak ska du he. And then second, to express our support to the UN Women Call to Action. It's very, very timely, and WHO supports this fully and wholeheartedly. And as Katja said, we will take it to G20. Thank you also, Ambassador, for your kind introduction, and very nice to meet you again. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. Ohayo gozaimasu. It's an honor to be here, and I offer my deepest thanks to the Japanese Parliament for hosting this event. My thanks also to women political leaders for organizing this very important summit and inviting me to speak, and especially my thanks to Silvana. Silvana, I think she's out of the room. I congratulate you in particular for your remarkable leadership in founding this group. The evidence of your success is right in front of us. The timing of this event could not be better, coming as it does during Japan's Gender Equality Week and on the eve of the G20 in Osaka. WHO is a wholehearted supporter of gender equality, both in WHO and in what we do. For the first time, we have achieved gender parity in our senior leadership, and we're making progress toward disparity in other leadership roles. And Katya is one of the advocates, actually, for pushing us to that direction. But we're also integrating gender into our technical work. For example, there are 42 outputs on which we report to our member states. We will now include gender, equity, and human rights in our reporting in every single of them. This is a groundbreaking approach that we believe will yield real results. For the first time, we have now published disaggregated data by sex in the World Health Statistics. This is giving the world a much clearer picture of gender inequalities in global health. Last year, we also launched a campaign to eliminate cervical cancer. We seek your support for this campaign. But gender equality is not just an ideal to which we aspire. It's not just the right thing to do. It's absolutely essential for achieving our objectives. As you know, our top priority is universal health coverage. Our vision is a world in which all people receive the health services they need without facing financial hardship. And yet it's often women who miss out on services, and it's often women who are most exposed to financial hardship as a result of out-of-pocket health spending. Unless all women and men enjoy same access to health services, we have not achieved universal health coverage. This is not just a moral imperative, it's an economic imperative. Good health is a rocket fuel for an economy. It's a platform for girls and women to learn and earn, to be creative and productive, and to contribute to the well-being of society. I'm delighted that for your summit this year, you have chosen as your theme, taking action to advance society towards the Sustainable Development Goals. In the SDGs, world leaders have committed to achieving gender equality and universal health coverage by 2030. Your support in achieving both of these goals is vital. As female political leaders, you're in the best position to enact laws and policies to address the unique health needs of women and to remove the barriers that keep them from getting the health services they need. Of course, that includes maternal health and sexual and reproductive health throughout a woman's life, and action to stop violence against women. But we must also pay much closer attention to the way women are affected by non-communicable diseases. Harmful behaviors such as lack of physical activity and eating processed foods can lead to obesity and the increased risk of cancer, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. More women are smoking than ever before. More women are using alcohol in harmful ways. Although more men die from suicide, more women attempt it. Addressing each of these issues will require gender-specific interventions, But women are not only users of health services, they're also providers. Women play a vital role in delivering health in hospitals, homes, and communities. But while women make up 70% of all health workers globally, they're often clustered into lower status, lower paid roles. And it's usually women who provide unpaid care for disabled or aging family members. While women deliver health care, it's typically men that make the decisions that shape health systems. Women remain underrepresented in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Only 12 of 216 Nobel laureates for medicine have been women. New data shows us that there is still far too much discrimination in the health sector. This holds back women, it holds back progress, and it undermines health. We need to encourage women to lead in all aspects of health, in health systems, in communities, in science and technology, and in government. That's where your support and leadership is so important. I know from my own experience in government that political commitment at the highest level is essential for achieving universal health coverage and for gender equality. At the United Nations General Assembly this September, world leaders will meet for the high-level meeting on universal health coverage. This is an unprecedented opportunity to catalyze political commitment from heads of state and heads of government. But that commitment must be backed up by parliamentarians and by parliaments. Parliaments play a critical role in translating international instruments into national laws and local action. Last year, WHO signed a new memorandum of understanding with the Inter-Parliamentary Union to foster commitment and action. The IPU Assembly is now working on a global parliamentary resolution which will help to further cement political support. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, I leave you with 3 requests. First, we ask for your support as women political leaders to ensure universal health coverage is high on the agenda of your government and your parliament. Second, we ask for your support to champion action on health issues that especially affect women, including our campaign to eliminate cervical cancer. And third, it's vital that as many heads of state and heads of government as possible attend the high-level meeting on UHC in New York in September. I ask you to do everything in your power to ensure your political leaders attend the meeting and commit to UHC. Together, we can create a healthier, safer, fairer world for every woman, for everyone. I thank you. Arigato gozaimasu. And I would like to thank Nepal for this also. Thank you, Nepal.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tedros, and thank you for not only very important messages, but for carrying forward the WPL messages to the G20. Katja will now resume the panel, and just so that you're all aware of timing, it will now finish at 9:55. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Tedros, for being both, a personal advocate for this, for gender equality and women's health and rights, and having turned around WHO to be gender equal in the leadership positions. You lead by example. Thank you. So back to the panel and women's health. It's very well connected, isn't it? So that was a good fire starter. So to the questions, and if I may start with you, daughter, and Marcella, we have decided we're on first names because when you get things done, you have to be personal as well. So can I just ask the two of you, what is it that we can do to make health systems more focused on women's health and needs? And how can the different sectors work together to do it? Dora?
Thank you. Thanks, Katja. I believe that to allow women and girls to fully participate, they need to be healthy. So the question is how to achieve this. And for me personally, as a leader in the private industry in a pharmaceutical company, what can I do? What can we do? So for those familiar with MSD, also known as Merck & Company in the US and Canada, you might know that we have a 125 years history addressing some of those fundamental health needs for men and for women, including addressing river blindness through the Magdalene donation program, which is the longest standing private medicine donation program in the world, responding to the HIV crisis back in the 80s and the 90s and up until today, and our commitment to end preventable maternal deaths through our MSD for Mothers initiative. And MSD for Mothers is our program where we have pledged to donate $500 million to seek for a woman for a world where no woman has to die giving life. And we address the needs of mothers, of women specifically, to access quality care so she survives, she thrives, and the wider healthcare system also is strengthened. One area that we're focusing on is the quality of care, and we're focusing on local private providers as a key focus of our program, so that governments and health insurance companies can also leverage not only the public, but also the private capacity. That's important because about half of women actually seek care, seek health care in the private system. And there was a recent article in The Lancet that actually shows that there is about 5 million deaths from lack of quality of care, but only in the sense 3.5 million from lack of access to care. So quality is as important or maybe even more important than access. Just want to say a few words about an example in India, which is an MSD for Mothers program, Manyata it's called. It's an example where 5 states in India with the highest maternity mortality is working to improve the quality of care for women before, during, and after giving birth, and by working with private maternity providers. It's facilitated, it's initiated by multiple stakeholders coming together. So it's the healthcare professionals, it's the Obstetric and Gynecological Federation, FOXI, who is leading this. GPIGO is very important, Maternity Foundation, a number of players is coming together. And it's important because India has one of the highest maternity mortality burdens in the world. And the key issue is insufficient lack of care and lack of quality standards. So the program actually addresses the quality of care, and there is improvement. A number of programs have been initiated, and it's not only now helping preventing death for mothers in India, but it's also an example that can be leveraged in other countries.
Thanks a lot. So the public-private collaboration is absolutely key if we really want to see health for all and also play a key role in UHC, in the universal health coverage, and emphasizing what Dr. Tedros says about we got to work to get those leaders at that summit, and we got to work to get gender equality in there. Marcella, I know you have a great example also that involves civil society as well. Would you share that?
I certainly do. And I just want to say that I'm delighted to be here with the Irish delegation. I'm accompanied by Senator Ivana Bacik and Deputy Margaret Murphy O'Mahony, and we have Eileen Lawler, our official, accompanying us. And also we're joined by our ambassador to Japan here today, Ambassador Kavanagh. So we're absolutely delighted to be here. And also, I just want to say to our Japanese hosts, They've been absolutely excellent, so arigato. In relation to how we advance women's health and to ensure that we're adequately catered for, I think first of all we have to get women elected. That's the key thing, and then we can certainly prioritise everything that we want to achieve. And I have just a couple of really good examples of that. We established a women's caucus in our parliament back in 2017, which is an all-party caucus of women. And one of the initiatives that we prioritised was a motion proposed to the government to end period poverty, which means that the government accepted it. And it means now that sanitary products for all women and girls will be available in public buildings. And I think that's a really fantastic initiative. And that came directly from all of the women across party and independence sitting down and saying, let's prioritise this and achieve this. So we were delighted. It's a great win. And I think of another even more important and groundbreaking work was through the work of the Citizens' Assembly, when the government asked the Citizens' Assembly and established the Citizens' Assembly, which is 100 people across the country, to sit down and wrestle with the issue of abortion. Because as you know, in Ireland, abortion was illegal, and the protection of the unborn was enshrined in our constitution, where equal right was given to the life of the unborn and the mother. And that created a chilling effect for the medical profession in terms of providing services. So in order to come up with a solution to this, or how to solve this, the Citizens' Assembly, and it's a fantastic example of consultative a process where citizens, taken away from the heat of political debate, sat down with experts, with people who are directly impacted, and considered the issue. And they produced the report, which they referred then to government, who had a committee put in place, and it resulted in a referendum being put to the people. And we now, since the beginning of January of this year, have full services available for women. So it's a great news story, and it's a great example of that type of intersectoral, intergovernmental and cross-sectoral discussion.
Thank you very much. Yes, that was a win that went around the globe and has encouraged many other countries to tackle women's sexual and reproductive health and rights. So thank you for that and for being the example there. If we look at kind of what is it that policymakers can do, Minister Miko, would you share an example of best practices to overcome the barriers that limit women's access to health services? What is it that policymakers can do to kind of share the social conditions and cultural norms that limit women's access? You are very welcome.
So anyway, a little bit ago, the police story says that actually things occur in the field. Though all these crimes occur in the field. So we policy makers, I think, should always focus on the field, gemba, what's happening in the field, because the state of the thing or some things are always going on in the field. So outreach program is very important to listen to the voices in the field, what's happening. And then we like to make use of that into policy making and legislation. That's very important to have that sensitivity, as I mentioned earlier in my speech, that in the field we need experiences, and then we have to scrutinize what's happening, and then in order to make it contribute to the public policy. So we have to make efforts in that area. One of the examples is that throughout the women's life, that the health support should be given. We need to have a legislation, expeditious here in Japan, to give the lifelong support of health of women. Thank you for your applause. But anyway, this summit, I hope, will be the important trigger point to encourage us, so that I hope to get the support of other Japanese legislators so that we like to realize that law.
Thanks a lot, Marcella. Dorte, any comments on what is it that policymakers can and should do?
Well, I think, I'll go back to my previous comment, the more women we have, the better, and we can really prioritise women's health, that's for sure. But in Ireland, when I was Minister for Health Promotion, we had a very interesting policy, which was the Healthy Ireland Framework. And from that Healthy Ireland Framework, a number of policies referring to improving the health and physical and mental health and well-being of all of our people. But within that, there were specific strategy which was launched, and it was the National Strategy for Women and Girls. And out of that, we're working with the National Women's Council of Ireland to put in plan an action plan for women's health. And that's a really important action. And I think all of the actors working together, bringing in experts, listening to experts within our communities, and also looking at international norms, international successes, I think is the thing to do. So I think not thinking that we have all the answers, but taking the best evidence from our own findings, but also looking at international findings, I think is really important. And to that end, we have to think of everybody within our society. So for example, we also have to look at in our case, we have people who are called travellers, and we have a new committee established to consider their needs, and health and well-being will form part of that, because a lot of women in the travelling community have specific needs, and we need to address that as well. So we have to ensure that everybody is considered when we're considering these huge difficulties.
Thank you. I would say that health and medicines is a very regulated area, so it's all about political will and facilitation of getting those multiple stakeholders together when you have projects and programs going on. And specifically about logistics, there are numerous examples from many of our programs that as you as political leaders are open to having discussions, to listen, and to actually make legislation flexible so that we can do healthcare, deliver healthcare, including medicine in a professional, in a safe, and in a way that is adapted to the local environment. That's very important.
And what I loved, what all three of you touched upon, was actually the listening and learning to women themselves. Because we can, as politicians, it's so easy to construct something that but if you don't listen, it might not be what they need. So listen to the need and listen to the circumstances. Who knows it best than the girls and the women themselves? So that women-focused health interventions and plans, key. So I have a question to all of you. Again, fast, furious, and fabulous. How will you use your power to make change? Both your individual and the one you carry with your institution. Fast, furious, and wonderful.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to continue to advocate for women and girls, and I'm going to use my position to pursue gender quotas for the local elections. We have gender quotas at national level now, where political parties must field 30% female candidates or they will be fined financially. We didn't have that in the local elections, and that's something that I'm going to advocate for, because I think we really need to focus and never take our eye off the prize, which is getting women elected.
Thank you very much. We are the minority. We only have a few female parliamentarians. And so we should not delve on the fact that we are few in number. We should try to enhance our horizontal partnership networking so that one woman can perform with the power of 10. And I think that sort of empowerment is very important, and the WPL Summit can become a trigger for this. And as Ambassador Kamikawa said, this is like a school for parliamentarians, and I think she was right. So we certainly want to increase these kinds of opportunities going forward. Thank you.
MSD believe that there has to be a world where no woman has to die giving life. So we'll continue to advocate for maternal health, to put in place projects and put all our expertise as a private sector in innovation, in bringing forward solutions and working with different stakeholders, because we believe that we can improve together.
Wonderful, wonderful. And if I may add, from civil society and from Women Deliver here, we will, from Women Deliver side, use our power with the G7, where we are on President Macron's advisory group to really push women's health and gender equality at large with the heads of state there, and then use our role that we have with private sector as advisors and governments with advisors to never give up and really place that gender lens to universal health coverage and to everything we do. So wow, thanks a lot, a great panel. And we agree on a lot of things. We agree that it's imperative to have a woman-centered health system, as we say, a health system that's ready to deliver when a woman is ready to deliver is a really strong health system. It's a 24/7 health system. We agree that the system must provide women with the sexual and reproductive health and rights, because it is a bedrock, health is a bedrock of gender equality and on political participation as well. We spend a lot of our time trying not to become pregnant and 5 years trying to become pregnant. So if we don't have the goods and services to take care of that. And then we agree on also that the investments need to come. We have to walk that talk. It's not enough to talk about women's health. It's also to walk that talk and invest. So it doesn't stop here. I urge you to take the conversation with you everywhere you go, and follow Dr. Tedros's encouragement and Edie Pumsile also to really push it where you are and use your power. Let's carry it. Silvana, I'm looking at you. You're the carrier to the G20, so take it with you there. And never forget that we have a lot of power. Let's use it to lift each other up. Let's use it to focus on girls and women. They count on it and they deserve it. And let's push that universal health coverage with the gender lens. So I'm going to leave you with the question, how are you going to use your power for good and for gender equality? Thank you to the panel. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Katja, and wonderful panelists. We are now privileged to have a session addressing climate change and establishing a recycling society. Climate change has been called the defining issue of our time, and for you as parliamentarians, meeting the commitments made under the Paris Accords are becoming increasingly challenging. We know that last year, instead of a decline, there was an increase in carbon in the atmosphere. Globally, 2.8%. So there is a lot of work to be done. And I am delighted to invite to the stage panelists for addressing climate change and establishing a recycling society, which will be moderated by Tokyo Bureau Chief from Bloomberg, Ms. Kana Nishizawa. So please, if you would like to make your way to the stage, we are looking forward to hearing all you have to say.
So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Kana Nishizawa from Bloomberg. I would like to quickly introduce all the panelists on the stage. First, Ms. Naomi Tokashiki. She's the member of the House of Representatives in Japan. She was the State Minister of Environment and State Minister of Health, Labor, and Welfare. And Ms. Veronica Delgado Garcia, member of the Senate of Mexico. She's also the ambassador for the Women Political Leaders Summit. And next to her is Ms. Paola Taverna, Vice President of the Senate of Italy. And lastly but not least, Ms. Tsitsi Gazi, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly of Zimbabwe. So today we'll be discussing the how to move forward to a more recycling society. Climate change and environment has been one of the main themes for the G20 discussions, so there is a lot of focus on that. And recycling comes in play because it's a key part of addressing that issue by reducing raw material use and consumption of energy and leading to a reduction of greenhouse gases. So in the interest of time, we won't be taking any Q&A, but we do hope to make this a very lively and insightful discussion for all of us. But before we get in, I'd like to give all the panelists a chance to give a short introductory remark, starting with Ms. Naomi.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I'm Naomi Tokashiki. We are talking about the recycling society, so that I would like to send out my message on this. I was the vice minister in charge of the environment. In international conferences, I see lots of women colleagues about the environment problems. Women are quite active and interested in. They are contributing greatly. I felt so encouraged by seeing so many women colleagues in the environment conferences. Environment issue is a common issue that everyone have to face with. We have to overcome this problem. So all the people in the world are collaborating to solve this problem. The previous century, I think we seem to have human beings suffered from so many wars and conflicts, but now environment problem is another challenge for us. We now have to unite ourselves to solve this problem as a human being, beyond the boundaries of a nation as well as the gender and many other differences. We have to get together, collaborate for the human being. This is a challenge, such a huge challenge, but this will give us a chance to work together, collaborate. So in that sense, in this century, we could have hope to work together to solve this problem together. To overcome this problem, we have to have a new technology, new innovation. So in the extension of the current technology and so on, we cannot solve fundamentally the environment problems. So we have to work very hard to identify innovation to solve the environment problem. Here in Japan, we in the past, we were had a specific condition in a small nation. We have to live together, coexist with nature. The people might keep it in a sanctuary, untouchable, the designated environment sanctuary, but Japan is so small, we didn't do that. So that we developed the nature, but we were friendly with nature in a symbiosis, and then created the way to coexist with nature. We have a spirit of mottainai, that let's abandon the wasteful practice, or the sense of this sympathy and empathy toward the others and nature. So that how can you achieve the coexistence with nature without hurting and harming nature? The recycling and recycle and cycle was emphasized in the traditional tea ceremony. That is a traditional ceremony. Just a drop of water should never be dropped or wasted. You make full use of available clean water. That is a traditional teaching we gave priority. However, as the economy advanced in the modern society, mass production, mass consumption, and mass waste dumping occurred, so that the traditional good nature cycle was cut off. The marine plastic, the waste pollution became a serious problem. The traditional nature cycle was cut off. That caused the problem of plastic waste as well. You have to have a good recycling and recycling-based society, which is very important solution. One of the solutions to these environment problems. You have to have this recycling-based society, and then in 2000 we enacted the new the law, reuse and recycle, and then so on. So 3R policy must be implemented fully. In the last 15 years, we worked very hard to implement this policy, and 80% of the reduction of waste was achieved here in Japan. And then this know-how has been accumulated, and we are transferring that to Thai and Malaysia and Myanmar. The technology transfer. In Bangladesh, for example, the waste proper handling was not taking place, which caused a major problem. In the last 10 years, Japan supported technologically and so on. The collection of the waste became 44%, now increased to 80% even in Bangladesh, so that the waste recycling is taking place. In other words, the Japanese initiative and knowledge is now transferred to other countries. We'd like to make contribution to the rest of the world in order for us to build the recycling society. And that way of thinking should be advocated and promoted. It's called the Satoyama Initiative to protect this neighborhood, the small mountains, to nurture and then protect the small mountains and little forests. That's called the Satoyama Initiative. And the way of thinking of Satoyama Initiative is now conveyed to the rest of the world. The biodiversity must be protected, the recycling society must be protected. And that is an initiative that we are emphasizing here in Japan. Thank you for your attention.
Muy buenos días, es un placer estar aquí hablando de un tema tan importante como es el cambio climático y el reciclaje.
Thank you so much. The climate change is real, and many people are needed to correct the situation, and we must overcome climate change because we live on this earth. And forests are being destroyed or natural resources are being depleted. And we need to protect nature. And the temperature is rising and it's very serious and we must admit it. And the sea level rise is also a serious problem. Climate change is affecting all the people and all the living things on Earth. And why are we facing these crises? We have to think of that. The specialists say that we must take measures right away, and we have to be prompt to take measures. And one of the issue is the
Hidrocarburos fósiles,
livestock industry, and also we are using the coal or the fossil fuels, and we are also destroying the forests. And we have to think about what people are consuming. So the consumption that led to this crisis on Earth, we have to think about the reasons. And the high priority for us is not just doing recycling. We have about 20 answers to correct this situation. Of course, recycling is important, but essentially, we have to look at the ways we do production or the way that we live. If we change our lifestyle, maybe we don't need to emphasize recycling so much.
Sono il vicepresidente del Senato italiano e faccio parte di un movimento politico.
Thank you. My name is Paola Taverna. I am currently serving as a vice president of the Senate of Italy. I am from the Five-Star Movement. The environment is a very key issue for the Italian Senate. Needless to say, politicians, well, we're talking about women politicians, and the fact that we are politicians means that we have the power and the right to change politics and all policies surrounding women and the environment. So we need policies regarding the environment. For example, consumption, excessive consumption, overconsumption, and many other issues we face vis-a-vis the environment. But just changing our behavior and customs can make a major improvement. And we have major issues facing us today. In Italy, there are also various environmental issues. Our country is surrounded by the sea, but marine plastics is a big issue because when our fishermen catch fish in the seas, they also catch a lot of marine plastics. So we signed a contract with the fishermen. The fishermen themselves, when they recover such plastics, We wanted to alleviate their burden, and that's why we signed a contract with them. And I'm sure we'll be discussing this later, but in Italian, we often say, if it's far from your sight, then it's far from your mind. That is, if we can't see the problem, if it's not visible, then it doesn't exist for us. But that's not the case, because it's an issue that's always been there and still continues to exist. And I'm looking forward to the discussion to follow. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tsitsi Gezi. I'm the Deputy Speaker of Parliament of Zimbabwe. Climate change is a real phenomenon that poses a great threat to the humans, animals, and ecosystems. In Zimbabwe, we recently experienced Cyclone Idai, which had devastating effects. Lives were lost, and infrastructure was destroyed. And we also have experienced intense droughts due to global warming. Why recycling is an effective weapon against climate change? Recycling eliminates the need for new raw materials to make a new product. For instance, recycling 1 ton of paper saves 19 trees from being cut. In Zimbabwe, our president had declared every first Friday of the month as a day to clean the environment. And also we have started to do recycling of waste, but it's on a small scale due to limited resources, and we don't have enough technology. And many women leaders are supporting the president on this noble idea of cleaning the environment. Women are the most affected whenever disaster happens, because women need to see to it that there is food, shelter, and clothing for the family. So we must help our fellow women. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would like to kick things off, perhaps starting with talking about a little bit of the broader issue. First off, how do you think politicians can work collectively with the civil society, private sector, and international organization to advance this culture of recycling and implement solutions? Would you like to start, Ms. Naomi? Or is there anyone who wants to? Sure.
What is important is you have to have ambition, will to do it. So that in order to build this recycling society, you all have to share this common view. So you first have to have that determination. Economy should also become a recycling society. Otherwise, you cannot build a sustainable society. These two things have to be there as a precondition. Otherwise, you cannot really build this new recycling-based society. In case of Japan, unfortunately, the environment issue is sometimes regarded as something dragging down the economic prosperity. Lots of people have misunderstanding, and that's our headache here in Japan. Environment issue, if you escape that, the things get worse. If you try to take a positive action, you can find a chance to improve economy as well, so that the environment problem entails that kind of potential. So here in Japan, the private companies, businesses, please take the active, proactive views on building the recycling society. Innovation is crucial for recycling society. Private sector needs to cooperate. The government and administration cannot stimulate innovation. So the economy and the environment both have to strike a balance and then be successful. G20 agenda includes this as well. Environment and economy need to be linked to create that kind of good cycling. So I'm sure that will be one of the agenda at the G20 meeting tomorrow. And the marine plastic is another problem. That is the urgent matter. We have to solve marine plastic waste problem. So these are two major agenda on the 15th and 16th of June. The first time that the environment ministerial meeting was held last week and at Karuizawa, and G20 environment ministers also discussed on this theme of issue. For example, the marine plastic waste framework was decided by the G20 environment ministers. So internationally, people have to work together to set a framework. Goals should be set and work hard together. That is the way to be engaged in the environment problem. You should not just direct other countries. You do this or what. But people should voluntarily set the goal and then work together and head toward that. People have to be motivated. They have to educate and enlighten the citizens as well, so that they will be willing to solve this issue as well.
Tenemos que considerar que todos los frentes
Actually, of course, the participation of everyone is necessary, and the government, I think, has to take initiative as well. So governance is crucial in that sense. For example, the local governments should play an important role, and then the nationwide efforts, proper coordination of the policy necessary, international coordination of that initiative is very important as well. And also, for example, in the border area, there's some contamination. People need to identify which country is a polluter. It's a very delicate, sensitive issue. Therefore, for us, we have to work harder so that like one private company or one volunteer activist is not enough. In other words, we have to involve many stakeholders, many parties, so we can work together against this climate change issue. In other words, government to government will work together, link together and work together, so that we may be creating the common laws and legislation and promote recycling, which I think is very important. It's not just the plastic waste. Maybe water recycling is very important, because water is a crucial resource. It's good for the food and then the healthcare and then even making the clothes and apparel. So, and then as my colleague mentioned, that the mentality is key word. In other words, to the group or collective entity, you have to teach, educate. First, you have to educate children, and then the children can teach their parents and adults. Only 13% of the recycling rate is the sad statistics for some countries. So for all the plastic waste, as the outcome of the history of the people, only 13% of plastic is now recycled. So that in our country, Latin American countries, only 4.5% of the recycling rate for the plastic, which is unfortunate. Therefore, in 2050 is a target year. We have to, the marine plastic waste will be increased according to the expert, and they warn us. As a result, each person has to work. In the house, we have to implement our own action. For example, the waste sorting has to be done in the house. For the new generation people, you might sort out their garbage or waste, and they know what to do. But old generation people are not used to sorting out the waste when they dispose. When I look at my child sometimes scolds me. Oh, you are not sorting out those garbage waste properly. So we, the older generation, might have more problem. We didn't have that sorting need in the past. So the sorting of the waste and garbage is necessary. Each garbage has each subcategory of the character, and reuse and recycle is possible. In Italy, a law legislation was adopted. It's called the end of waste, the subject of the waste. What's the significance of the problem induced by the particular waste and problem? You cannot really fully understand the scope of the issue. For example, it sounds funny, but old people or young people might need diapers. The recycling and the reuse of the diaper is a major issue. Climate change and the cause of the climate change is a certain waste, a huge amount of problem. By 2027, you need a major investment in order to enable this reuse and recycle, so that renewable energy source should be created. So investment for that purpose is necessary. For this is the issue which could kill planet Earth. We have to cope against such a situation. This desertification is another problem. A quarter of the Earth has now become desert because of desertification, which is a major challenge. Every day, immigration is another issue. But actually, more than immigration issue, desertification is a more serious problem. Which are the place of this problem? People no longer use this desert, so they have to escape, and they become immigrants or outplaced, displaced persons. So the recycling-based economy must be built. Otherwise, we cannot be saved. So we do have a big responsibility in that sense.
All women who are here present to go back in your respective parliaments and make laws that encourage recycling. Waste recycling will also create jobs for women and youth, especially in the third world countries where unemployment rate is high. Thank you.
If I can perhaps, for the audience, I think it might be helpful for each of us if you have any specific examples in terms of implementing, finding a solution in advancing towards a recycling society that you found have been successful, or what are the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them. If you have any very specific examples very quickly, if you want to share.
Puedo compartir con ustedes un ejemplo muy local.
For example, yes. I like to talk about the town I'm living in. For example, 165 cleaning shops exist. In those 165 locations, they set up boxes. That's where that the paper could be put, or the glass things, or plastic could be put in. And organic things, waste can be put in. So the sorting out of the garbage is now possible, and people can they discard in that way. We do recycling, and the work starts from our household. So in an ordered way, the waste can be now discarded in a well-sorted out way. Then you can achieve your recycling. By doing that, I think the residents now can enjoy the benefit and then do recycling, which is maybe just a local effort. But it's very important.
And also, we can apply this to the global level. That is, one of the important issue is that we did not have any opportunity to talk with experts. In the past few months, we started talking with experts and entrepreneurs and activists and scholars and legislators, and we tried to come up with solution. So we did some work to enact laws. We did lobbying. This is not for the interest of the few. This was for the earth. So the legislatures, we need people who can really act laws for the future. Because on this earth, in order to conduct basic reform, we only have 11 years. And that means that if the 11 years have passed, there's no longer any going back. Hi. So this is a town, and this town experienced severe air pollution, and mercury was found in people's bodies. This was called Minamata disease, and the people in the town, they never want to have this kind of air pollution. So they want to really create a town with cycling. So they sort out all the waste, 20 different ones. And initially, people were doubtful whether people could really sort out these 20 types of waste. But they made a system to support the people, and the people gave advice as to how to recycle. And actually, people had more communication between them. They said, "Oh, Mrs. So and such did not come out today to throw the garbage, so they went to her house to take a look." So there was more communication because of the recycling activities. I actually went there. And my electorate is a sweet city in Osaka. We have a new measure to reduce the marine plastic. So people use their own bags to go shopping, and that's something already common. But if you go shopping without your own bag, you don't have a bag, or you do not have enough of your own bags, what should you do? So there's a measure to lend bags to people. So they have large, middle, and small size bags that people can borrow, but they pay a deposit to use that bag. So if they bring back the bag, then they get refund. And there is a one-way plastic is no longer, let's not use one-way plastic. This kind of a message is written in the bag. So every time people use that bag, people see that message. And people understand we have to reduce garbage, waste, we have to reduce plastic. So it leads to kind of teaching to the people. This began in June. I want to see how effective it is.
Examples. And obviously, there's a lot of. Just wondering, I guess this ties into what everyone had mentioned about motivation, the consciousness among consumer individuals like us. How much does this norm and culture come into play? You did mention the concept of mottainai, sort of a regret of putting things to waste in Japan. But on the other hand, we have an obsession with hygiene and making things very presentable. As you might have noticed walking into supermarkets here, there's a lot of packaging going on. And I'm sure each country have their own characteristics, but wondering how we can address that. Does anyone want to have any thoughts on this?
The problem is that we have to be really specific. So we can talk to the government. We have to enact a law for it. In Italy, we requested the minister to go plastic free. In ministries, they don't use any plastics. So it's not just theory. We have to take a specific action to promote recycling. So in supermarket, we use the plastic bags or bags. In Italy, if you buy something and you have to, there's so much packaging, you have to unwrap the product, and by the time you have some product into a fridge, you have so much waste. So the distributor, we request that distributor does not use so much packaging. And at supermarket, also, we ask them not to pack so much. So the excess packaging should not be done. This is a small action, but we make that kind of request. So waste is born from everyday action. So If we cannot intervene, it's troublesome. We can take small actions in our everyday life. We can correct our action, and women occupy 50% of the world population. We are very strong lobbying